There are many challenges that beginner fish farmers do face, which translates into either dying fish or not making profits. In today's video, we are going to help you to bounce back in the next 24 hours. I know the last point is going to blow your mind, so you'd like to stick through the entire video. So the first thing you like to look out for will be water quality management. Now with water quality management, there are two different kinds of setups you are looking out for. Most of you guys do run either an open system or a closed system. Now an open system is a kind of pond where water runs into your pond and then you drain the water and then that water doesn't come back into the pond. And then the closed system is the kind of pond where the water runs from the fish pond into probably some filtration system that you do have on standby, and then that water goes back into the pond. So water quality management comes in two folds. The first one is the source water, and the second one is the cultured species water. I have a video up here that will teach you a lot about how to handle your source water, because that is the water you use in your farm. But now I want to focus on the cultured species water in an open system. You want to make sure that when you design your open system, it wouldn't take too much time for you to pump water into the pond and then also drain water. So you know that in open systems, we normally do change the water about 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the size of the fish, the stocking density, and then the amount of waste that the fish is producing. So the main challenge that people do face in closed system is how to regulate the parameters. And this is because sometimes you have the ammonia going up as high as possible, and then you have the beneficial bacteria in your filtration system not being able to convert whatever waste you are producing in your pond efficiently. So to solve this problem, what we tell people with a closed system will be that first of all, make sure you have a part of your pond where all the waste gets collected by either a suction or by a pump or through drain, and then it goes into your filtration system. So you want to make sure that that system you have in place should be efficient in taking out the waste. Then you look at your filtration system. Now, depending on the efficiency of your filters, you may probably have to be cleaning them from time to time. Some filters have to be cleaned twice a week and some 3 times a week. As compared to the open system, test is being done very regularly, sometimes daily, in a closed system. This is because you don't have a lot of your water going out of your pond, and for that matter, if you are not able to convert the ammonia properly into nitrates and nitrites through your beneficial bacteria, you would have a build-up in your pond which will lead to many diseases. So with the closed system, what happens is sometimes you also lose some amount of water to evaporation. So normally we do add up about 10% of the total water in the pond to just make sure that we are able to recoup the amount of water that we have lost. There are a lot of people that have a misconception around the closed system. People think that when you run a closed system, then it means that it solves every problem. No. Even in some closed systems, people still do change some amount of water. So we need to have that at the back of our minds. And running a closed system, you need to really understand a lot of things. You need to understand the parameters of your fish, and then you also need to understand the parameters of your beneficial bacteria that will do the conversion for you using the concept of the nitrogen cycle. In my opinion, over 60% of fish kill is as a result of water quality issues. So if you are able to be on top of your game when it comes to water quality issues, you would have less disease in your pond, and then you would also be able to have an optimum growth in your fish. And that leads me to my next point of feeding. There are 2 different things that happens when it comes to feeding: overfeeding or underfeeding. And how do you identify the situation? Sometimes when you realize that there's cannibalism in your pond, or you realize a lot of your fish are dying. So for a particular day, at a given time, depending on your time of feeding, there is an amount of feed that the fish is supposed to consume per pond. Exceeding those amounts would result in overfeeding, which would later affect your water quality. And then feeding below the quantity they are supposed to consume that particular time would result in underfeeding, which will now lead to cannibalism. There are many farmers who find this very challenging. That is, being able to calculate the feed to give their fish per day. So to be able to get this calculation, first of all, you need to find the average weight of the fish in a pond. So if you have a pond of 2,000 fish, at random sampling, you can look for the average weight of the fish. Then, if the fish is a small fish, you can use the different percentiles, which we have the 5%, the 3%, and then the 1%. But then the rule of thumb is the 5% is for smaller fish, and then for the older fish or matured fish, you decrease it to like 1%. So when you find that, then you multiply it by the total quantity of fish in the pond. And that will tell you what quantity of feed to feed the fish for that particular pond. So it's a bit simple. You need your average weight, you need a percentile, you multiply it, you see the grams that are supposed to feed each fish, then you multiply it by the total quantity of fish, and that will tell you what quantity of feed to feed the fish in that particular pond. So now, calculating of the feed to give your fish should be a little bit easy. For more explanation into this, we have the Lartman Farms course on our website using this link, also in the description section. It's www.lartmanfarms.com. You can go there, purchase the course, and then you can better understand how to use this. Many farms that we've personally visited, we've been able to identify the fact that farmers are not able to feed their fish properly. What I mean by that is the way of feeding is supposed to be like a discus kind of throw, where it's at a section of your pond, and you are supposed to spend about 10 minutes in feeding them. So you don't just come in and throw the feed and then go back, but then you want to spend some time with them, and then you monitor their behavior while you feed your fish. For those of you guys who have a lot of your feed going bad, it is as a result of the fact that you're supposed to store your feed in a cool and dry space. And so if you don't do that and it's exposed to water amongst other things, there could be a mold growth on your feed. And some farmers go ahead and feed their fish with this kind of feed, which is equivalent to food poisoning. So you have a lot of your fish dying if you do feed your fish with that kind of feed. So normally we do tell farmers that buy about just 2 months worth of supply. Ensure that it is kept in a cool and dry space. So anytime you go and get some feed from your feed room, make sure you cover it properly so that there isn't anything going in. And then also, sometimes it's not about water or any liquid touching the feed, but then sometimes people do store their feed around like machines, around places where it can be extremely hot. And if you don't take care, you would lose some of the vitamins that should be available for the fish. So the feed looks okay, it doesn't look like anything is wrong with the feed, but then when you go and give it to your fish, they may sometimes develop some level of malnutrition depending on the situation they are facing around that time. So make sure that your feed is always in a cool and dry space, and don't take too much. Just make sure you do around like 2 months of the supplies that your fish would need. And to be able to do that, remember I mentioned the feed chart. So we have a chart that also tells you the amount of feed you would use for the entire production, so that from time to time you buy as and when, and then you can factor in some amount of inflation, and then you'll be good when it comes to feed. Some of you farmers also have a problem with cannibalism, disease, and disparity in sizes. If you are facing this problem, the solution is simply sorting. Sorting is separating bigger fish from smaller fish, healthy from unhealthy, male from female. And these processes are very, very integral towards the success of your farm. So sorting is normally supposed to be done in the morning, and also you're not supposed to feed your fish before doing your sorting. To sort, you need 3 different things, and the first of them is to get a spare tank. The spare tank can be another pond, square tank, for which after sorting you transfer the different batch into. Then the next thing you'd like to look out for will be to sterilize that particular pond among other things that you'd use for sorting. So your basins, your colanders, and even you, the person entering into the pond, the scoop nets and all of that, you want to make sure that you have sterilized them with salt water. And the last bit will be to make sure that during the period of transferring your fish and the selection and all of that, there should be enough water available to them in between all of the activities that you'll be doing, so that you don't induce too much stress on your fish. And after sorting, depending on the level of the stress, you may not need to feed the fish that day, which means that feeding should be done the next morning. So if you realize that there's a disease in your pond which is leading to mortalities, immediately take out all dead fish from the pond, because if you leave them in the pond, some of your fish may feed on them, and the bacteria, virus, or whatever it is will be transferred onto them. Then you would like to separate the healthy ones from the unhealthy ones, and then you put them in different tanks, and then now you administer medication, which will be according to your consultant or your fish vet. Another major issue that many farmers do face has to do with security. Security from 2 different angles. The first angle has to do with predators. And these predators normally go for your juveniles or fingerlings. So we are talking about the frogs, the snakes, and the birds even in the sky. So for you to solve that particular problem, what you would need will be a cover net which is strong enough to cover your various ponds. You use this cover net especially for all types of ponds, but then if your pond is an earthen pond or a pond below 2 feet from the ground, you want to make sure that you have a very strong net in place. I've seen places where snakes are just going into ponds and other frogs, and they're just taking the fingerlings from the pond. Then the second aspect has to do with human beings and the activities from both workers and outsiders. So to be able to protect your area, make sure you have a boundary, and with this boundary you can use a wall. And in some ponds that we have built, we have the metallic mesh all around them to safeguard the farm from people being able to come in and steal, and then also people being able to have access to the farm and drop certain contaminants into the pond, which could lead to the total loss of your fish. Then when it comes to your workers, you want to make sure that you are taking care of matured fish, feed, and among other farm inputs. Make sure there is a logbook which is available. Every worker is supposed to log in to anything that they take in terms of any of your inputs, and they are supposed to sign in to take that. And then after they are done using them or anything whatsoever, they have to come back and then sign out. This is going to help you to check the activity with respect to all your inputs. Now, for those of us who also sometimes have fish being harvested out of your farm, and then some people do give away fish amongst other things, I would entreat you to probably reduce the amount of fish that you give away, and then also take records of that particular kind of fish that is going out of your farm, so that at any given point in time you can ensure that everything tallies in your farm. One of the things that you need to take note is that you cannot be an absentee farmer. If you're an absentee farmer, then you would make a lot of losses. So as much as possible, you want to make time, visit your farm on regular basis, and then take note of every activity that goes on in there. It includes people who are coming to the farm to buy and people who are moving out of the farm. Every single activity, you as the owner of the farm, you should know these activities into detail. And if you are not available, make sure there's someone that you do trust which is sometimes questionable, who would be available to give you all of the response from time to time. Finally, the point you've been waiting for is record keeping. Record keeping is very essential for fish farmers. It tells you every single thing about your farm. So we mentioned water quality, right? When it comes to taking records for water quality, you are looking at your pH, your nitrate, your nitrite, temperature, CO2, among other few components. These things are very, very important for your daily usage in your farm, because at any point in time where there's a problem in your farm, there's fish health related issues, the fish vet or the consultant who is visiting your farm can take a look at these records, and they can come up with amazing solutions to help you to minimize your losses. The next set of things that you would also like to take record of will be the amount of feed you've given to the fish, the amount of feed that wasn't eaten, that is if they didn't eat all the feed. You also want to take records of how many fish died. So that's the mortality. That is what I said earlier, that you spend about like 10 minutes around your feeding and amongst other activities, just monitoring your fish. So you take record of how many fish you've lost, and then the last record you take will have to be with respect to the observation. So today you went to feed your fish, how were they behaving? Were they active? Were they passive? Let us know which of these things you are facing in your farm for that particular day. So whenever we are to visit your farm, or any consultant or fish vet visits your farm, it will be easy for them to solve the problem almost immediately. If you've received any form of value, you can let us know in the comment section. And then if also there's a problem you are facing in your farm, which we have not touched on, you can let us know in the comment section, and we may probably come up with an episode to address that. We could also answer you just in the comment section as well. If you would also want to start your fish farm in 2024, there's a video up here which would show you all of the prerequisites to be able to start your farm as fast as possible. See you same time.